Hello, welcome back to another FNAF theory. Is theory the right word? Who? Hypothesis? Is that more accurate? Because I realised the last one that I did, Michael Afton is Gregory's father, didn't have exactly solid evidence, but it was more of just seeing what guidelines, what parallels we could find to see where the story could be going. So, I've sort of done the same thing, but this time I've gone and looked at the books. Recently, I've been reading through the Fazbear Frights series, and specifically Fetch caught my eye. Not the story Fetch, the book Fetch. The second story in it specifically, Lonely Freddy. Now, here's the thing. There's a few contradictions between the graphic novel, and the actual book itself. The actual book itself says our characters like Alec, a blonde with green eyes, whereas the graphic novelization shows him to have brown hair and not green eyes. So I'm going to lean a little bit away from looking at Alex's character design and look more to Alex. That's going to be a difficult one. I've come up with a couple of things, and I think specifically that story is about the Aftons, and specifically the early years of the Aftons before Dave, or the crying child, whatever you'd like to call him, was born. Again, this is more of a hypothesis to see if we can get some details that explain a little bit more about the character dynamics. So, first of all, Alec, I think, is supposed to be Michael, and Hazel is supposed to be Elizabeth. First of all, Alec, bully towards his sibling, manipulative, acts out constantly, his favourite animatronic is Foxy, ruins his sibling's birthday party within the story, and I have noted down that it does, one of the lines in the story says, worst crime yet, suggesting that he's going to do something much worse in the future. But by the end of the story, he's sort of not alive anymore, so it's like, you have to pick and choose which aspects of the story that you take, such as the fact I was confused. No, we'll get into that a bit later. I'm getting ahead of myself. Hazel, also quite a decent parallel to Elizabeth. Blonde hair, green eyes, good at pretending. She is amazing at pretending that she's playing along with Alec's plan. I could say quite manipulative as well, but not to the same level Alec is. Alec is specifically manipulative, whereas Hazel is just very good at pretending and is outlined as being good at pretending, which is a very Elizabeth/baby thing to do. I wrote down that she tricks Alec. What I mean by that is they had a plan to swap roles as the good child and the bad child, and eventually at the birthday party it was that Alec would expose Hazel to actually be the bad child and have a massive happy about being spoiled. In actuality, that doesn't happen because she bails on the plan and decides not to do that and just have a normal birthday. So I guess you could also say that that's a line of sort of tricking her brother. But the thing that I noted, and they worded it a very strange way, is that she wants, or there is a toy Foxy in the story called Yerg Foxy. But eventually they do describe it as a toy Foxy that she wants. The actual reason why she wants it is so that she could give it to Alec. However, the fact that they are giving that character a toy Foxy, I think is quite significant, considering in FNAF 4, in the room that we assume to be Elizabeth's, is Mangle, the toy Foxy. I know it's loose because obviously Foxy never had a toy iteration. It was always Funtime Foxy. I think it's fair to say that that version of Funtime Foxy is not the same. because like the Funtime Foxy, and it has faceplates that split open. Like there is the Lolbit Funtime Foxy model. There is specifically that version, and then there's what I would still call Toy Foxy, that is identical and built like the actual toy animatronics. The only reason we don't get that name in FNAF 2 is because it's been utterly destroyed by children and turned into the Mangle. And then finally with Hazel, I think it's very important that she has a friend called Charlotte that is named multiple times throughout the book. That's significant, in my opinion, and I will get back to why. Meg.
Who let you back in the house?
The parent of Alec and Hazel. Supposed to represent Mrs. Afton, in my opinion. She wants perfect family, she's tormented by spiders, she brings in not self-help books, she brings in parenting books for her and her husband to read, which we don't get a lot of information on the parents, but the fact that when we get on to Ian, who is meant to represent William, he is resistant to putting any time into reading those books. He just generally seems less involved as a parent, and the vibe that you get and the story hints at is that it's a very nuclear family. When Alex scratches the family car, it's his car, so that would assume he's the one that's using it the most, driving to work and such, meaning Meg is probably a stay-at-home wife, and we don't really hear anything about a job that she does. She seems to be pretty focused on just planning Hazel's birthday party. I think that dynamic between the two parents is also what sold me on this. Yes, Alec and Hazel line up perfectly with Michael and Elizabeth, but at the same time, the parents line up with what little we know about the Afton parents. They have an unhealthy relationship because we get lines like, can't we just skip ahead to the part where you tell me what we're supposed to be doing, followed by Meg replying, just read the chapter, Ian. And there is more lines in the story that sort of show that family dynamic and the dynamic between those two parents getting strenuous, to say the least, even if they are trying to work as a team. And we do end up finding out bits of information about the specific age difference between Michael. Jumping ahead of myself. We do find out the specific age difference between Alec and Hazel, and some of the backstory from the family before the story starts. So we find out that Alec has 5 years on Hazel, and Hazel is 10 as of the story. So I'm assuming it's her 11th birthday party, which what the hell is it with FNAF and 11 birthdays, by the way? Capella, or whatever the fuck her name is from the week before, was turning 11. Gregory is assumed to be 11, and Cassie has her 11th birthday at the pizzaplex. And that birthday of Gregory's, assuming that him and Cassie are the same age, played into my theory last week whenever I uploaded that thing. Maybe there's something is there something we should know about that? They don't specify what age she's turning in the story. I assume it's turning 11. So they've set out that specific age between the two, and they also say that the reason of Alec's behaviour being very poor is the reason that they move in the story, so that they can be close to Aunt Gigi, which is... She's not... If this is meant to parallel the Aftons, we do not know anything about Afton having a sister, or Mrs. Afton having a sister. The only person that we confirmed to have a sibling is Henry, and that doesn't seem to link. However, these are meant to be parallel, not connected. This story is, regardless of whether or not you think these books take place in the actual timeline, it is parallel. They're supposed to relate and run in the same direction, but they are never going to touch each other. They have similar themes, but the characters from each story will never interact. I think we could say that instead of it being so that they could be closer to Gigi, they move house to be closer to a restaurant, like Fredbear's. Which, I had a point about FNAF 4 house and FNAF 6 house. and how that is probably like possibly post-divorce or something. I don't want to touch FNAF 4. I would not touch FNAF 4 with a 10-foot barge pole other than the bullies, because that is a whole can of worms I'm not ready to open. And I think there's another thing that sort of made me start questioning a couple things. So Hazel specifically torments her mum to a breaking point with a spider. She wakes up and there is a spider that she previously removed from the bedroom in her when she wakes up. I would be freaking out as an arachnophobe. I would be literally shitting the bed. If Mrs. Afton, if Meg was a arachnophobe, that is an evil way to torture somebody. If Meg is supposed to be Mrs. Afton, that makes Ballora a hell of a lot creepier. We've always suspected that Ballora was supposed to be a representative of Mrs. Afton, and the fact that she crawls about and walks like a spider is a bit grim. The fact that you're encased in or represented at least by an animatronic that crawls and moves like something that makes you uncomfortable, sort of a disrespect towards that person in my opinion, and that could be intentional by the person who built it, which would be on brand for William, honestly. But not only that, I think there is a connection to the book that comes after 1:35 a.m. because Delilah, when she's getting haunted by the Ella doll, has sort of, I can't remember if it's a dream or if she wakes up and sees a spider on the roof, but there is a connection to being tormented by a spider in that story, and there's a connection, and I use connection loosely, but there is a connection between Elizabeth and Charlie, Baby, and Ella / Eleanor, because obviously we know Fourth Closet, Ella and Eleanor was supposed to be the iterations of Charlie growing up that would use the illusion discs to sell the lie, basically. Eleanor is a little bit different because in the Fazbear Frights series, she's literally just this sort of like agony demon. I think it's still supposed to be representative of Elizabeth in some way, but this is what I mean. There's a connection. There's like some sort of link, but it's a very fuzzy line between the four of them, I guess. I mean, even the fact that the Ella doll is identical to the Springlock suit in the film, that is supposed, or that we assume is supposed to be an early, more realistic version of Baby. So it's like these characters are intrinsically tied together, but we have no idea how or why. We're just sort of suggested. There's information vomited up at us that we're supposed to just be like, yes, I can see the bits, but I don't know what it used to be. And it's surprisingly, the vomit brings me back to Charlotte, because at the end of the story, she vomits on the Lonely Freddy. This is one of those plot points where it's like, this doesn't line up with the games, and it tells me that the books aren't part of that world, but it's telling us something. There's a kid called Charlotte that's repeatedly named, that's at a 10-year-old's birthday party, that suggests they're around the same age. That is sort of letting me lean towards either Charlie being older than we imagined in 1983, around that year, or this is evidence towards Charlie 87 theory, which, if you don't know what that is, it's the idea that Charlie was murdered in 1987, not 1983, which I am starting to believe a little bit. Fazbear Entertainment, the channel, not the company, had a very good video on it. I was in and out because I was working whilst I was trying to watch the video, but solid points. They did make the point that the DCI didn't happen and the Charlie's death is the event in FNAF 2 instead. Not entirely sure about that, because then what are the dead bodies lying around the pizzeria and the minigames, but hey, I still think there is an idea to be had about Charlie dying later than we thought. especially since Help Wanted 2 also suggests that. I guess this is more of, as I say, these are hypotheses because we have to wait and find out what more evidence will suggest. But I like doing it this way because it gives us more opportunity to discuss. It's not just, okay, this is what's happening, let's move on. Like what happened with Help Wanted 2, we knew the story as soon as the game came out. So, I don't know, I think it could be interesting. I've made my points. I think there is a couple more things, like Hazel gets referred to as Golden Hazel quite a lot. I don't know why the G in Golden is capitalised. Maybe they're trying to say that in this story specifically, the crying child's character is split up and divided between the two siblings. Fuck knows. This is what I mean in terms of it being parallel but not connecting. And the fact that Freddy Fazbear's location that's introduced in the story is Freddy Fazbear's family pizzeria, not Freddy Fazbear's pizza place, which could suggest this is the 1985 location. There's no technology in the story other than the Lonely Freddy's. There is no mobiles, there's no modern day technology like there usually is in the Fazbear Frights series. That's probably intentional in my opinion, and I think it's because they're trying to say that this is either the first Freddy Fazbear's location, that he's following the naming convention of Fredbear's Family Diner, Freddy Fazbear's Family Pizzeria, and then eventually after all the murders, they obviously rename it to Freddy Fazbear's Pizza Place in the second iteration, and the third in FNAF 6. We don't really know that it's not a real pizzeria, is it? Maybe. I mean it is, but there's nobody there. I don't know, I'm just shooting shit into the wind, as I said last episode, but I think this is pretty solid. I think, here's my suggestion, and here's my point. Go back and read Lonely Freddy. See if you can pick up any information that would relate to the Aftons, and see how that could possibly fit into the timeline. Because I think it's trying to at least tell us something. And I'll give you my last selling point on this theory. Alec, the letters A-L-E-C fit into Michael. Hazel, H-A-Z-E-L, fits into Elizabeth. I don't know if that's a fucking coincidence or what, but that, when I realised, blew my mind a little bit. So I think, if anything at all about this story is supposed to connect, we are supposed to understand this relationship dynamic between Michael and Elizabeth before the crying child came about. And that is the story. That is what we're supposed to be looking at. There's a 5-year difference between the two of them. Maybe that's supposed to help us in the timeline somewhere, but I think the main part of this is supposed to understand the dynamic between these two characters before we go and play Sister Location or something like that again, so we can get a deeper context. But who knows, I'm going to try and look at the books a little bit deeper and see what more ideas I can come up with. Thank you all for watching, and tell me how fucking stupid I am in the comments, because I know you love doing that.